lenders one day, no warning at all. Hey, we just got rid of stated income. Oh, we're not doing no doc loans anymore. Well, why not? No explanation, right?
Wow.
And we started seeing this over, and it was almost day by day. Today this lender, next lender, or tomorrow this lender cuts a program, and we were all, something's going on. Something big is going on, okay?
You feel in the air.
And this was before anybody knew anything.
Welcome to How To Real Estate Podcast, a podcast to help you start, elevate, and catapult your real estate investing career. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on any new podcasts that we post every single Monday. Jared tested.
Jana approved.
What's up, everybody? Our next guest has been investing in real estate for over 20 years. He's the branch manager at Castle & Cooke in North Salt Lake. You are a top producer, aren't
Correct.
you? Yeah, top producer. He's a loan officer. You've been doing it for over 14 years
14 years as a loan officer, correct.
And done over $45 million in loan volume, right?
Yeah, that's this year alone.
Is that all?
This year.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, so.
That is great. And you were an agent before that, right?
I was,
And what got you from an agent to doing loans?
Well, I became an agent because I was an investor. And as I was telling you guys before the show, I was doing real estate investing, and one year I realized that I had paid my agent about $40,000 in commissions.
Woo!
And I said, that money should be going to me.
Right.
And so got licensed. Obviously, you're going to save money when you buy and sell, and just having access to the MLS was fantastic. And then I did that for a couple of years, but I found that I didn't really like being an agent. I'm more of a numbers guy, and so it was an easy transition to get into lending because it's basically the same industry, just the other side of the fence.
Yeah.
And so I've loved it ever since, but I never stopped doing the investing side, which is what we're going to be talking about today. So.
Oh, perfect. So as far as the real estate side goes, you don't have your license anymore?
No, I do not have a license anymore. You're not allowed to be dual licensed if you're a Fannie Mae lender, and so just do the mortgage side, but got a lot of real estate connections, which is great. So
Sure.
Had to give that up, the commissions. But
were you a listing agent when you were an agent?
No, I mean, I primarily got it for my own benefit, just for finding properties. But then I worked with a lot of investors at the time, and so I would mainly just work with that group.
Yeah.
I was never really a traditional agent, but having the license was great because I learned a lot,
Yeah, awesome.
And it helps.
Translated to everything, yeah.
It helps with the investing side as well.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Negotiating with agents and just understanding how that world works.
Exactly.
As you know, Jared.
Yeah.
That's been interesting. So as far as the lending side, do you have products that investors can use?
Absolutely. We've got a lot of good products. We can dive into that right now. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, definitely.
So do you want to talk about just kind of the basic requirements to qualify for a mortgage on the investment side, or what specific questions do you have?
Yeah, no, good.
I would say what types of loans, because obviously you can't get an FHA unless they're going to be living there, or conventional loan. If you could go into that,
you bet.
Types.
So let's just talk briefly about different types of loans.
Sure.
So conventional, FHA, VA, USDA, these are some of the more popular products. So an FHA loan, like you mentioned, has to be owner-occupied, okay? But one little trick that a lot of people don't know is you technically only need to live there for 1 year. So a really good strategy, if you're thinking about being an investor, is you buy a house with an FHA loan and you only need 3.5% down. That money can be gifted, it can come from 401k, it can come from all kinds of different sources, so very flexible. And if you live there 1 year, you can now leave that house and convert it to a rental. And FHA doesn't care. You can keep that loan on there for the life of the loan. And so you literally bought a house for 3.5% down where you would have needed 20% down on a conventional purchase. Okay.
Wow.
Now it requires you to move, obviously, so you got to have some flexibility. But that's a really easy way for investors to get into a house. Okay. Now, if you buy it strictly conventional, you can do the same thing with a conventional loan. You could buy, for example, an owner-occupied home, live there for a year,
right.
Put 5% down or maybe 3% down, okay? And then same thing, then you could move out, hold it as a rental. If you buy a house strictly as a rental property or as investment right out of the gates, now we're talking about a whole different story. You're going to need 15 to 25% down depending on circumstances. Rates are higher, fees are higher, everything's harder to qualify for. Your debt ratios have to be a little tighter, and so they scrutinize those a lot more just because if you think of it from a lender's point of view, an investment property is a higher risk loan. Okay, right. No two ways about it. If you have your house and you have your rental property and things go south, which one are you going to pay first? Your house, right? You don't want to be making your family homeless, and so that's why those loans are a little harder to get. It's because lenders know that they're a little bit higher risk.
And what's the, as far as the interest rate goes, is it a big jump? Is it a 2%?
Yeah, good question. It's generally about between 0.5 point and 1 point higher than a traditional. So if rates are at 4, you can expect 4.5 to 5 maybe on an investment loan. And that's just, it depends on credit, how much money down, a lot of different factors go into it, but that's kind of a safe ballpark.
So it's not something ridiculous like
No,
5%?
No, it's nothing like hard money or anything like that.
Do you operate? Do you hard money loans too as well, or
I don't personally, but over the years I've developed a lot of connections, and so I definitely have some good resources for that.
Oh, okay, cool.
So yeah.
So you got some hard money lenders in your back pocket if you need it.
Correct.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah. Cool.
And so the investment loan, is it only one type of investment loan that you can get, or are there different types?
No, there's different types. So we talked about loan conversions, taking a traditional loan and turning it into an investment property, and that's easy. And then your basic investment loan is going to be a conventional loan product, okay, that gets sold to Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac. Okay, those are the big entities that buy most every mortgage, and you've got to go off of their guidelines. Okay, so there's county loan limits, and it's basically a traditional loan. You've got to have your basic requirements are 2-year work history. Doesn't have to be the same job, but just without any big gaps. You can just show a 2-year work history. If you're self-employed, you've got to have a 2-year history of that, okay? And then we're going to look at your taxes and come up with a 2-year average of your income.
So your W-2s if you don't have W-2s because you are self-employed, then
we've got to look at taxes. Yep.
Okay.
And that's where that 2-year average comes in.
So if someone just starting out, they've been investing for a year, they're just starting out, they're pretty much screwed as far as getting financial. Until that 2 years happens, or is there other options?
If they've started a brand new business, you mean?
Yes.
Correct, yeah. So unfortunately, if you're a 1099 employee or brand new business, there's pretty much no way around that 2-year requirement. Well, there is. I have some other tricks, but generally speaking, generally speaking, you've got to have a 2-year history to qualify for a traditional mortgage.
Okay, got it.
And so that's the most popular format to just buy a regular old investment property is 20% down is pretty typical. Technically, you can do it with 15% down, but there's going to be mortgage insurance and the fees are quite a bit higher. So 20 to 25 is that sweet spot, and that's where you're going to get the best deal. And then it's just traditional, requirements. 2-year history, you got to have minimum credit of 620. The higher, the better. Everything's going to be better rates and terms with better credit. And then we're looking at your debt ratio. It's just a traditional loan, except more money down and underwriting scrutinizing everything a little tighter because of the fact that it's a higher risk loan.
Yeah.
So
I have a question. So with subject to, so if I get sometimes when I'm talking to someone's going through foreclosure, that's a great opportunity for a subject to purchase, subject to the existing financing. So one of the concerns are that a lot of the sellers will have is like, well, I still want to buy a house when I move here. Is it possible for them to leave the mortgage on the property and still get a loan even though they have the debt ratios off?
It's a really good question. So the answer is they have to have a 1-year history of somebody else paying that mortgage. Okay, so if whether they're doing seller financing or subject to, like you mentioned, if they can. And this is something you might want to think about putting into contracts because they're going to want the participation of that seller. Okay, so let's say a year goes by and they're in a position to buy another house. Well, me as the lender, I'm going to say, well, what's this mortgage here? And they're going to say, oh, well, I sold that property, but it's we did a wrap or whatever. And then at that point, we're going to need proof that the other party has been making those payments. Because if they're the ones making the payments, we still have to show that as a debt, right? But if we can prove that, hey, title changed hands, you're really not the owner anymore, somebody else is making the payment, then after 12 months, we don't count that against them.
Okay. So, for example, if I was paying an escrow company, because that's why I pitch them is like, I'm going to pay an escrow company, and then they're going to make the mortgage payment. So like a third party that cares about both of us, so it gives them, a nice little comfy comfort blanket. And so if in that scenario, they would just kind of, the escrow company can send them documentation, hey,
correct.
Jared's company's been paying for this much, this long.
Right, yeah, like escrow specialists, we would just get a statement from them, showing, hey, the last 12 months have been paid by a third party. And then we don't count that debt against them at that point.
Right, got it. Awesome.
Yeah, really good question, though.
Yeah.
And now, going to the investing side. So you've been doing it for 23 years.
Correct.
A little over 23 years. But you said something on your strategy about cash flow. So you don't look at cash flow anymore, right?
That's right. I completely changed my strategy over the years. So I've been through thick and thin. I was, experienced the crash of 2010, lost everything, had to rebuild. They say you're not a true millionaire until you've made $1 million. Lost $1 million and then made another $1 million. And so I'm on the phase 2 now, which is great.
You're like, I'm almost there.
Yeah, I lost a lot of money in the crash, as did most people. And so when I first got into investing, I was quite a bit younger. I'm 46 now, and I was, in my 20s, and I had the vision of, hey, I'm going to get out of the rat race. I read Rich Dad Poor Dad, fantastic book. But I was a little aggressive, and I said, when you're looking at numbers, you're like, well, I can buy this one for this. Here's my mortgage. Here's what I can rent it for. Well, there's $500 a month. Well, geez, if I just had 10 of those, I can quit my job. And you start doing the math. And it was cash flow, cash flow, cash flow. So that's all I was looking at. And there's nothing wrong with cash flow. I love cash flow, okay? But what I'm trying to say is, if that's your only objective, you've got to be careful, because you literally start putting the rose-colored glasses on when you do that. And you say, hey, there's this triplex in Ogden. This was back in the day. I can buy this thing for $70,000 and it cash flows $1,500 a month. Like, how can I go wrong? Well, you can go wrong if your tenants, I don't want to badmouth any areas, but let's just say your tenants have some personal issues and they can't pay their rent. Well, now
some habits.
your cash flow just turned into negative cash flow, right? And so I overlooked that as a young investor. I just said, I want cash flow, cash flow, cash flow. And I got in trouble. It burned me bad.
Was that during the crash you got in trouble?
Correct. This was before the crash, yeah. So I loaded up. I had like 12 properties.
Oh, nice.
When everything fell apart.
Yeah.
And if you think about it, when the economy suffers, it starts at the bottom, and works its way up. Yeah, you get laid off, you lose your job. Well, there goes that rent, and all these different situations.
So go. We're due for a correction soon, right? Well, my crystal ball is not super clear, but eventually we're gonna have some sort of correction. Could be crash. No one knows. Can you walk me through a little bit back in 2008 when the crash happened? You lived through this. You moved on from this too, which is amazing. So was it all kind of all at once, where all your properties kind of went to crap, or was it a domino effect, or how did that happen?
It all happened pretty fast. So at the time, my day job's always been, lending. And so I kind of had a little bit of an unfair advantage. When I say I lost everything, I sold everything and lost a lot of money, but I was one of the very fortunate that it didn't destroy my credit. Okay, I took a huge loss on a lot of these properties, but I was able to get out faster than everybody else. And the reason why is because I saw lenders one day, no warning at all. Hey, we just got rid of stated income. Oh, we're not doing no doc loans anymore. Well, why not? No explanation, right? Wow. And we started seeing this over, and it was almost day by day. Today this lender, next lender, or tomorrow this lender cuts a program, and we were all, something's going on, something big is going on, okay?
You filled in the air.
And this was before anybody knew anything, okay?
Oh my gosh.
And it was literally, maybe a month before, Lehman Brothers and Bear Stearns and all these companies had major problems that we had a little bit of a warning. And so I started listing my properties to get out of them.
So you knew something's up.
Yeah, I knew something was happening. I knew we'd had a good run up to that point, and so we started selling stuff. Now we had so many, we didn't get out of all of them.
Sure.
And so then we were behind the 8 ball, dumping the price, and then we couldn't get rid of it. Dump it more, and that's a whole different podcast. But let's just say I got out, lost a lot of money, but other people got destroyed. Short sales, foreclosures, just ruined them. That's pretty incredible that you were able to see all those signs coming through. Yeah.
And being in your field, especially where that's pretty incredible.
Yeah, and I even started warning people, builders and stuff that I knew. I was like, get rid of all your spec homes, like dump them now, like something's coming, And sure enough, within a year, everything was completely turned upside down.
Did they listen to you?
Some of them did. Some of them did not.
And the ones that didn't, were they like, oh, I should have listened to you, man?
Hurt. Yeah, they got hurt pretty bad.
Jeez.
So it was a crazy time for sure.
I bet they listen now, though.
Yeah. Right.
So back to your question, when you go through a hard time like that, you by nature become a lot more conservative. And so now my strategy is completely different. We can dive into that if you want, but I would, in a nutshell, my strategy now is I invest for retirement. Okay. I make my money at my day job, okay? And my investments are for future, and that's it, okay? I don't care about cash flow. I want it, but I'm okay without it because I know that prices are going up. People are moving here, companies are coming here. Like, this is a great time to buy, and that's I'm in wealth creation now, not monthly cash flow, okay? And so my new strategy in a nutshell is I'm gonna buy a nice house in a nice area and take my sweet old time to find a really good tenant that's always gonna pay on time. I'm gonna have it professionally managed, so I don't have to do anything.
Yeah.
And as long as it's break even or close to break even, I'm happy as a lark and I'm on to the next property. And for me, and there's many ways to skin a cat, I'm not knocking any other strategy, but for me, that's been amazing because now all my properties are literally 100% passive. I don't do anything. And when I say nothing, like I've got stories where I've even forgotten about a property I owned.
That's a nice problem to have.
Yeah.
One day, my wife and I were going over our portfolio, just kind of going over everything. And at the end, I was like, oh my gosh, we forgot about Syracuse. Like, literally, we forgot we owned a property. We bought it the year before. And
a year
I had
before.
never heard a thing from these people. Just get the check every month.
Yeah.
Property manager's like, everything's good. And I literally forgot that we had that property. We went into it once.
That's hilarious.
And I'd never been back to it. Now,
Right.
I'm probably too passive. I should do drive-bys and make sure they're still there.
Right, yeah.
But the point is, if you do it right, real estate truly can be 100% passive. And that's just how I've done it. That's how I switched gears. And,
So you focused more on the end game
correct, yep.
versus...
Yep. So my strategy is that, and then, I just love looking at my mortgage statement every month, watching that balance go down and the value go up, and I can literally predict in this many years I'm going to have this much cash flow.
Yeah.
And it's just a guaranteed retirement for me. And so that's how I do it now.
So what are you doing right now to secure yourself if 2008 happens again? Heaven forbid. But if something like that or worse or maybe just pretty close, how are you protecting yourself?
Okay, good question. As I mentioned before, I've become a lot more conservative because when you get burned, you do that. And so I'm a big fan of reserves now, okay? I think where a lot of people get hurt is they get over-leveraged, okay?
Agreed.
So they say, oh yeah, I have 20% down, and that's it. There's a reason lenders want you to have reserves, okay? And that's part of those lending requirements. When you buy an investment property, you've got to have a little extra money set aside because they're not stupid. They've been here a long time and they've seen the ups and downs and they know that, hey, you're going to have times when there's vacancies. And so lenders require that you have a certain amount of reserves. Me personally, I have my own personal threshold where I kind of double that. And so for every property, if the lender requires 2 months reserves, I want 6 months, okay? Just for my personal comfort that, hey,
Each property,
correct,
6 months.
Yeah. That's just my threshold. So
Yeah.
I know that, hey, if things go south again, this thing can be vacant for 6 months. And that's pretty good cushion if you think about it, because you can always dump the price and there's different strategies you can do, move in special, but I just like having that extra money there. And of course, anything can happen,
Yeah.
We never want to say, hey, real estate's always going to go up, because that's not true. And we never want to say 2008 is never going to happen again, because it might.
Yeah.
But on the other side of the coin, if you don't take those risks, you're losing out on so much opportunity. And so in my opinion, regardless of what the market's doing, the reward always outweighs the risk if you play your cards right.
Right. So are you buying? So you're in the long term, the end game, right? So are you buying all your properties in 30-year, or what kind of loans are you using?
Okay, yeah. By and large, if there's any way I can do a 15 or 20-year mortgage, that's what I'm shooting for. Just because of where I'm at. You might have a different strategy, okay? So I'm 46 and don't want to be working when I'm 70, okay? So I'm doing the math. I want this one paid off. I want this one paid off. And so I'm a huge fan of the shorter-term loans because you're going to have a lower rate.
Yeah.
And when you look at the amortization schedule, the savings is ridiculous. I mean, it's huge. A 15-year versus a 30, you're going to save hundreds of thousands of dollars in interest. And that's just free money to you, right? That you might as well be pocketing yourself. Now, as a new investor, that could be tricky to do 15-year loan, because you either need a ton of money down or it's got to be the right property that cash flows. You don't want to get into a negative cash flow situation, okay? I'm not a fan of that. But here's something cool about when you build your portfolio. See, I've got properties that I've owned since the crash, Things fell apart and I got right back in when it was at the bottom.
Right.
So those properties have appreciated a ton and there's a ton of cash flow. If I have $700 a month cash flow on this property I've owned for 10 years, well, I can afford to get into this new one at a negative $300 a month cash flow on a 15-year note, right?
Gotcha.
Normally, I may not buy that one by itself, but hey, the whole portfolio takes care of itself. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so in my opinion, I'd rather do that, shorten the term, guarantee myself the savings and future retirement money, even though technically that one property is negative cash flow.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So that's another reason you should just get into investing, because the more you have, the more options you have.
Right.
This one cash flows, this one doesn't. I can sell this one, pay this one off. I mean, there's just so many options when you have multiple properties.
How often are you buying right now?
I'm always in buy mode, to be honest.
Love it.
They say one of my favorite real estate sayings is, when's the best time to buy real estate? 20 years ago is the answer. When's the second best time? Today. Okay. And people, another favorite saying is, it's all relative. People say, why would you buy right now? We're at the top of the market. So in 5 years, it's not going to be a top anymore. You're going to be kicking yourself if you didn't buy. And I follow market trends more than I follow ROI and cap rates and things like that, And so I'm looking at supply and demand, and I think in general it's a good time to buy anywhere right now, just because the economy is so strong, but especially in Utah, especially Utah County. I mean, Silicon Slopes, good grief. Like, I would buy anything I could get my hands on down there right now, just because of all the businesses moving here, and we've got so much going on in Utah with the, the airport remodel, and we've got Amazon, and we've got all these companies coming here, and we're booming.
Yeah.
Like, I'm buying anything I can get, and I don't even care what the price is, as long as it meets my parameters of mostly breaking even. I just think we're in a very good spot to buy.
So if you don't mind me asking, how many properties do you have right now? If you don't mind sharing.
Yeah, absolutely. So I currently only have 6. Went through divorce this year, so it was cut in half overnight.
Gotcha.
So that was sad.
Well, if it's only half, it came up pretty good.
Right? But I'm in, like I said, I'm in buy mode. Okay,
Yeah.
So I just closed on another one last month.
Oh, nice.
Got my eye on another one. Hopefully, turn of the year, I'm gonna get into another one.
Nice.
And so. I buy as often as I can, let's put it that way. Okay, so, and I'm a big fan of leveraging other assets as well, and we can talk about that, pulling equity out of this property to get into this one over here. I do a lot of that.
Do you do HELOCs or just a full refinance, or how do you do it?
Both, just
Okay.
whatever makes sense. I love HELOCs. I think it's one of the best tools you can use, okay, if you have if anyone doesn't know, HELOC stands for Home Equity Line of Credit, okay? So primarily you do them on your owner-occupied home. So if you live there or if you have a second home, you can access the equity as a line of credit, okay? And it's basically the world's biggest credit card / checkbook, okay? So if you're undisciplined, this is a very dangerous tool, okay? Because you can do a lot of fun Vegas trips and fancy restaurants with this thing, okay?
It adds up quick.
Yeah, but if you're disciplined, in my opinion, some people get stuck with this thinking of, oh, well, this is my house. I don't want to leverage it. I don't want to put any risk on it in order to buy this investment property. But at the end of the day, it's all the same thing, left pocket, right pocket. If you don't make your payments on this house or this house, it's still going to affect your credit. They could still foreclose. So in my opinion, who cares where it's coming from, right? If equity is just a fuzzy feel good, in my opinion, okay? It is doing nothing for you other than making you feel good, okay?
Right.
So use that equity, access it. If you got $50,000 in your house doing nothing, pull that out, use that as a down payment for another house. And there's no seasoning requirement. That is those funds are accessible right now to put into another property. And why would you want one property appreciating when you can have 2 or 10, right? And so I'm a big fan of that. Cash out refinances are a little bit different. You're going to be capped at 80% and lower on investment, 70 to 75. And so it all just depends. Everything depends. Okay?
Sure. That makes sense.
A HELOC's a great tool if you're going to. The way I use it is when I find a property, I'll use that for the down payment, and then I just try to chip away at it as fast as I can, pay that down, and then buy another one. Okay?
Right.
Cash out's great because you're going to have a lower fixed rate for the long haul, but you lose the flexibility because they just give you the money and that's it. With a HELOC, you pay it down, you increase it, you can do all kinds of different things.
So how easy how hard, I should say, is a better way to put it, is it to get a HELOC, or I don't know what you would call it, a business lock, or on investment property? Is that unheard of?
It's possible. It's harder to do. They're going to be a lot more strict on the loan to value ratio. Okay, so on an investment HELOC. There's very few places that even do those, and I believe you're going to be capped at it's like 60 to 65% of appraised value. So you have to have a lot of equity to be able to do it on investment property. But on owner occupied, if you have good credit, you can go up to 100%.
Yeah.
And so it's a way to really access that money and put it to use somewhere else.
My home we live in, we don't have mortgage. We have a 90% HELOC.
Oh, okay.
We
Great.
just kind of turned that. That's how I got my first fourplex. Was we pulled out of the HELOC
Nice.
and bought.
So
the
you've done that
fourplex.
strategy. That's fantastic.
Yeah, it's great. It's lovely.
Yeah.
Now, question. I mean, I guess leaning back on since we're talking about HELOCs, is it possible to buy a home using a HELOC instead of like from the get-go, instead of even doing a mortgage? I just want to. There's plenty of equity. I just want to buy a HELOC or get it with a HELOC.
Yes, you can do a purchase HELOC. Mm-hmm.
Purchase HELOC.
The typical way to do it is a first and second combo. Okay, so for example, if you have a mortgage over 80%, you have to have mortgage insurance. Okay,
Yeah.
Either monthly or you pay a premium or the lender pays it for you. But either way, somebody's paying mortgage insurance if it's over 80%.
Yeah.
But a strategy is you do an 80% first mortgage and then you get, say, a 15% HELOC to go with it. Okay.
Okay.
And so now Fannie Mae's satisfied because they've got their 80% first mortgage, and there's no insurance requirement because the HELOC covers the rest of it. Okay, so borrower comes in with 5% down, 15% HELOC, and then the 80% first mortgage. That's a good strategy because you can pay that HELOC down, and now you have access to that money.
Right.
Okay. And
Some
so-
people use that, that's used for down payment situations, right, where people don't have
Yep.
the money. But then you get
Correct.
the perk of, now you have a HELOC.
Yeah,
that
it's
you can
already in
use.
place. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. So.
And a great strategy on that is kind of what you're saying. You're chipping away. So if I use my HELOC and I owe this much, then all the rents just come back into the HELOC, and to slowly chip that down. You can just wash and repeat and keep on going. It's
Exactly.
pretty
Yeah.
sick.
Yeah, like I said, if you're disciplined, it's a fantastic strategy to use.
Yes, I even talked to my dad. He's in his 70s now, and he. I told him there's some great ways he can pay off his mortgage quicker. We can do there's some different strategies you can use. And he's like, I don't have the. He says, I know if I had an extra $20,000 accessible, I'd buy on stupid things. So,
Exactly.
And kudos to him because he realized, like, I know myself, I'm just going to buy a boat.
Yeah.
That's a boat fund. Like, no, it's not a boat fund, Dad.
Right. Yeah, you got to do a deep dive internally before
Yes.
you get the HELOC. Hey, is
Right.
there any chance I'm going to be buying a Porsche with this money?
Yeah, exactly.
If the answer is yes,
Exactly.
you might want to reconsider.
I really want a Porsche, though.
That's right.
Okay. Awesome. So now you said you're a KISS investor. So which is keep it simple, stupid.
Yeah.
And I love that you put on here in the notes. So how do you keep it simple?
So it kind of goes back to that strategy I mentioned. I'm a make sense investor, right? So
Right.
I just look at a house and I was like, would I live there? How's this? Do I like this neighborhood? And it's just simple stuff like that, And I look at how close is it to a school, and how close is it to the churches, and how close is it to shopping, and is it on a busy road? That's what I mean by simple, right?
Okay.
Like I pretend that I'm the tenant. Would I live here? So yeah, there might be a house that's a great deal, but it's got railroad tracks behind it. It's got power lines. It's a disaster neighborhood.
Yeah.
On paper, that thing could be killing it, right? But I would probably turn that down regardless of how good of a deal it is, because I think to myself, I would never live there. And I don't know anyone who would ever live there, right? And so I'm just thinking that's going to be a headache deal, And again, kudos to the people who take those deals.
Oh, sure,
right?
sure.
But for me, I just want the clean, nice houses in the nice areas that I would live in, and it just works. I mean, that strategy has just worked because I have longer term tenants, better credit, they stay there. The kids love the area, they love the church, and they don't want to leave.
Yeah.
I want a tenant staying for 10 years. I don't want them ever leaving.
Yeah.
And so that's just been a strategy that works for me. I'm looking more at, like I said, more at trends. Okay, what businesses are coming here, what's the inventory looking like, what are supply and demand levels, and all that's pointing to buy right now. And so I look at that more than ROI and cap
Right.
rates and things like that.
That makes sense. Have you ever? Are you strictly a buy and hold investor, or have you done flips?
I am
or-
now. I've done flips though. Yep.
Okay.
And so here's my opinion on that. No offense to the flippers. Have all the respect in the world for you. However, it wasn't my gig, and here's why. In my opinion, when you're flipping, you've created a job. You have a
Right.
second job
Right.
or a full-time job.
Yeah.
That's your career.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, think about it. It takes a lot of time and effort. Even if you're subbing everything out, like you're still
It does.
orchestrating
You're on
this.
top of
It's
it.
huge time investment. So it comes down to time value of money. If that's your thing, awesome, more power to you. But my thing is mortgages, right?
Yeah.
I don't have time to be doing that. And so I was never, I made money at it, but I was never really successful as a flipper just
Sure.
because that wasn't my thing. Okay, so
Yeah.
that would be advice I would really give people thinking about flipping is this is not an investment. This is a new job that you've created for yourself. And you
Right.
can make good money. But the question is, do you want a second job or do you want this to be your full-time job? If the answer is no and no, I wouldn't recommend it.
And, well, and I mean, I'm a wholesaler myself, and I've done flips, and it's a treadmill. You're constantly on that treadmill
Right.
running because you're at the mercy of your next deal.
Yep.
You know, and so
Yep.
what a lot
Well,
of
and then
people-
there's also tax consequences too. You know,
Yes,
you're
100%.
missing out on the long-term capital gains versus short-term and
Yeah.
appreciation and all kinds of stuff and the tax write-offs, you know. So
Right.
over the long haul, and I can even tell some examples, you know,
Yeah,
of
yeah,
why
I'd love
I'm
to.
about buy an old guy.
yeah,
Yeah.
we'd love to hear
So,
some examples.
Here's just a couple of them. So,
Yeah.
I'll tell you a fun one. This one just happened about 6 months ago. So, as a mortgage lender, looking at addresses and appraisals, and
Yeah.
usually I don't think twice about them. It's like this address, that address, who cares? But one came across my desk, and I was like, wait a minute, I know this address. It was my next door neighbor on my first house that I bought when I got married, 23
Really?
years ago, okay? And it was on Scotch Pine Lane in West Jordan. It was a condo out there. We bought this townhome brand new, okay? Paid $98,000 for it. 3-bed, 2-bath, garage, pool, nice place. And I was almost didn't do it because I was so scared. This is almost $100,000. $100,000, honey. How can we do this? Like I was freaking out. So ended up buying it, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Lived there for 2 years. And I was so naive back then. I didn't even know what equity was. I was like, so explain this to me. You're telling me that I can do whatever I want with this money. Like I thought you had to roll it into the next house, right?
Right.
They're like, no, you can just have the money and do whatever you want. Really? Like we're talking about like $10,000 here. Okay, is what we appreciated in a couple of years. I
And
was
you were in the
stoked.
early 20s, right?
Yeah, I was
Yeah,
like
so that's
24.
like-
Yeah, I was like so young. So we sell this property. I think we paid off a couple of things, and then we rolled the rest of it into the next house, right?
Yeah.
And I couldn't believe that we made 10 grand. I was just like, this is the coolest thing ever.
Right.
Like I
10
love real estate.
10 grand in your early 20s.
Yeah,
that's like
in
a massive-
1996, right?
Yeah, that's a
Okay,
ton of money.
So anyway, rolled it into the next house, yada yada. Well, 20 years later, this property comes across my desk, right? And I'm like, oh my gosh, I got to find out what this thing's worth. Well, it appraised for like 220. Okay, so more than double. And I quickly pulled up an amortization schedule. I was so
Yeah.
curious, and I had the worst rate ever. We were at 7 3/4. Okay, and we were so excited to be under 8. And even at that crappy rate and amortization, I ran the numbers. I would have owed about $45,000 on the house. Okay, and then I ran the rent analysis. That thing's, you know, today that's renting for $1,500-1,600 a month, easy.
Oh my
In
gosh.
that great area, right? My mortgage was like $800 a month. Okay,
Yeah.
so doing the math between appreciation, cash flow, all this other stuff, I took $10,000 and I could have had $200,000. Think about that.
Oh.
10 versus 200. And so at that moment, I mean, I'd already made this decision a long time
Sure.
ago, but at that moment it confirmed that, yeah, I'm a buy and hold guy. Okay. And it kicking myself, like, why didn't I keep that? That would have been the perfect rental property. So anyway, that was one story. Another one, I like this one because this is more proof that it's always a good time to buy. Okay. So this one I bought in the summer of 2007. The worst time imaginable. I mean, you couldn't pick a worse time to buy. Okay.
Everything was hot.
It was in Foxborough, North Salt Lake, $250,000 house. Okay, it was brand new, and on top of that, we put another 25 grand into it. Okay, finishing some rooms in the basement and landscaping. So we're into this thing 275. Well, by 2010, it's worth 175. No joke.
Ouch.
All the neighbors are foreclosing and short selling and freaking out.
Wow.
And I'm telling my wife, hey, don't worry about it. Like, we're gonna move at some point, and this is gonna be a rental property, and who cares?
Right.
It's no big deal. And in fact, let's leverage this bad opportunity because rates were getting dumped at that time. The Fed's trying to save the day, right?
Yeah.
So I got in at a 30-year refinance on a 15-year, no joke, 2.75% fixed rate.
Oh my
Okay?
gosh.
Oh my.
And guess what? Still have that loan with 6 years left to go. Okay.
Wow.
And when we refinanced, it was $1,450 a month. Okay, we moved a couple years later, rented it again, fit my parameters. We rented it for basically break even, right
Right.
around $1,500. Okay, Guess what that rents for today? $2,300 a month. Okay.
Wow.
It's a 4-bed, 3-bath, 2,400 square foot house, huge yard. So $2,300 a month, and it's worth between $4 and $425 conservatively, and the mortgage is barely over $100,000 owing on it. Okay. So think about that. I bought it the worst time possible.
Yeah.
And now it's one of the best properties in the portfolio.
Because you're playing the long game. You're
Exactly.
And that's the funny thing with, and it's just like psychology. When people should buy, they sell. When they
Correct.
should sell,
Yep.
they buy.
Yep.
Or, yeah, they say that right.
Yep.
It's interesting.
So in a way, this sounds really bad, but I'm kind of looking forward to the next crash, so I can buy.
Yes.
I want to buy at a discount.
so true.
Oh my gosh, that sounds fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, it's
And here's another thing to think about that, because you said, what are you doing to prepare for the next crash? Well, guess what? If you look at statistics, I should have brought these with me, but real estate prices nationwide dropped on average about 20 to 25% during the big crash. Now, some areas, California, Arizona, like 70%, like Nevada, crazy numbers, okay? But on average, it was like 20 to 25% dip. Guess how much rents dipped during that same time? Only about 3%. Isn't that interesting? Well, think about it. It rolls downhill. You lose your house. Guess what? You're not homeless.
Right.
Now you're renting, right?
yeah, the demand goes higher. For
Yeah,
rent.
or you can't afford this rent, well, you go to a cheaper rent. Well, the rentals are always there. And so what I'm telling myself now is if it crashes again, yeah, my equity might look ugly.
Sure.
But guess what? I'm still 15 years away from retirement. I don't care. It's going to rebound.
Yeah.
So if it crashes again, there's a very good chance I'm not going to lose out on my monthly cash flow because they're still going to be paying rent, right?
Right.
And if I lose a tenant, I'm going to put the guy that lost his house in there.
Yeah.
He's going to pay me, right? And the equity may go down, but I can still maintain those mortgages. I've still got my reserves, and now I'm in double buy mode, right? Like I
Yes.
hope they go on sale.
Yes.
So I'll take that one, I'll take this one, I'll negotiate here, negotiate there. So I think you don't develop that until you've been through it once before. And so, like I said, it sounds bad, but I'm kind of excited for the next dip.
So
I don't want to crash. Let's get that straight,
of
because it's
course.
bad for everybody,
Yes,
right? And it would be
yes.
bad for my mortgage business, but I'm looking forward to a correction. Let's put it
Yeah,
that way, because
yeah.
it's just a great opportunity to buy.
Well, and for me right now, that's another big factor why I'm doing wholesaling right now, because I'm just building capital. So when things go on sale,
Right.
the next dip, I can pick things up, and it's kind of hard when you're going on. Like I deal with 99% of every deal I touch is off market, and so I'm talking to these people. They need to sell, and if they have more than a month's time, they can whatever my offer is, they can put it in the market for $100,000 or $50,000 more and get it. You know, so when it dips, I mean that'll be effectively corrected, I guess to say, but not a.
Yeah.
No one looks forward to dip, but I'm saying
Yeah.
well, I can still.
And honestly, I mean, we all want the bull market to continue. It's been
Yeah,
fantastic.
right.
You know, it's been the biggest bull market ever. It would be great if it always continued, but it's not.
Yeah.
You know, there's going to be ebbs and flows no matter what. Crashes, I think they're pretty few and far between. I really don't think we're going to see that again. It was a totally different situation than it is today.
I agree.
But there will be dips, you know.
Yeah.
And even if there's not dips, I'm buying at the highs. I mean, I just bought a house last month, right?
Yeah.
At the very high, top of the market. But guess what? I absolutely believe that in 5 years, it's going to be the best decision I ever made.
Yeah.
You know, so I do things a little bit differently.
No, it's smart. It's a good way to go.
No, you get people that put off buying because they're just waiting for the crash
Yes,
or waiting
yes,
for
yes,
everything
yes.
to settle down. It's too hot to buy, and
Yep.
what happens is, and I've seen this, is over time the prices just keep going up, and I'm just looking at them like, hello, you know, you missed out.
They get priced out of the market. Well, for owner occupied, they literally price themselves out of the market. If you're approved for 300 today, you know, in 6 months or a year, that might not buy the same house. You know,
yeah.
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
not the house you want anymore. And so I think fear keeps a lot of people out where they need to just be buying. You know. And another favorite saying is, you know, I'm talking about renters. Let's say you're looking to buy your first house and you're afraid because the prices are high. Well, guess what? You're already paying a mortgage.
Yeah.
Just somebody else's.
Yeah. Exactly.
Okay, so when you buy, you're locking in that rate. You're locking in the equity. You know, now it's yours versus paying somebody else. So whether you're afraid or not afraid, we're all, unless you're living in a cardboard box, like we're all paying somebody's mortgage.
Right.
Might as well be your own.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's kind of rate too at that.
Oh yeah, and right now rates are so low. It's just a fantastic time to buy.
Right. How do you feel about rentals with HOAs on them?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that. So I do have a couple of properties that are condos. Okay, I don't love HOAs. I'll just tell you right now.
I'm with you.
They can be scary. There's a vacation property in St. George, that is in the portfolio, and it's got an HOA, obviously, and we do nightly rentals on that one. And it's been a great property, okay? But I've had other properties where it's a small complex, and you've got mom and pop running the HOA, and they don't know what they're doing, and it can be sketchy, right? You never know when you're going to get hit with some huge bill that says, hey, we got to redo the roof. We need $2,000 from everybody. And you're like, what?
Yeah.
Whereas if you have a big, so in other words, I wouldn't say don't do it, but do extra due diligence, right? Look at the budgets. When did they replace the roof? When did they replace the pavement? You want to find out. You want to try to predict upcoming expenses. Okay.
Yeah.
The other thing you got to be, and as a lender, I see this. You got to be really careful. Is any lawsuits? If there's even a hint of a lawsuit, don't buy that property. Okay. Because that'll literally put the brakes on getting a mortgage or being able to sell the property. The HOAs in a lawsuit, especially for like structural issues, nobody's lending on that thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you can literally be stuck with that property, and that's a bad situation to be in. So you've got to be careful.
So how do you check on if they're in the middle of a lawsuit? I mean, they don't want to advertise that. So how do you
Right. Yeah. The lender's always going to check that. Okay. So we have our third-party checks that we do, and we always talk to the HOA. And so to do a traditional mortgage on a property that's a condo with an HOA, we have to get documents from the condo association. They have to provide those. Yeah. And so that's when they're going to disclose all that.
So if I'm looking at a property that has HOA, will every lender check for if there's lawsuits going, or is it just
absolutely.
It's required?
They won't do the loan if there's pending lawsuits.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Well, there are some subprime lenders that'll do it, but then again, you're paying more down payment, more interest rates, higher risk,
You're
right?
Paying more for it.
Yeah.
It's part of their responsibilities too, with the due diligence under the Rep C, that they just provide all those documents to you
that's true.
anyway.
Yeah. So I would say, again, I wouldn't say don't do it, but just be extra careful.
Right. I'm not a big fan of HOAs myself, so yeah.
It just adds another layer of risk is what it is. Because you can have, let's just say there's curveballs coming your way, okay? And you don't know what it is. Could be we need this repair, that repair, lawsuit, whatever. Or they come up with some stupid rule that says, well, now we don't allow rentals anymore. You just got to be careful with HOAs. So,
have you always looked at single family, or have you looked at multifamily at all?
No, I've done multifamily as well. I dabbled in commercial a little bit, where I had some, 5, 6 plexes. I think the biggest one we had was an 8-plex back in the day. I'm not a fan of commercial. Again, other people do it, and then they're really good at it. But it just wasn't my bag. Bag tea, because it was hard to sell them. As a traditional lender, we can lend on anything up to 4 units. Okay, so big fan of duplexes, 4plexes, things like that, though.
Yeah.
I personally like single family the best. The reason why is because, like I mentioned earlier, you get that nice house in the nice area, and the people stay. The kids fall in love with the neighborhood, and they don't want to leave. Right. Whereas 4plexes and stuff, they're more transient. Okay. People coming in and out. Yeah. So you can cash flow more on those, but you're going to have to deal with the headaches of in and out. Okay. Right. So we got to figure that into your mix.
So with your purchases that you have, I'm assuming that you don't have a mortgage on every single one of them, right? Because you do have limits on how many you can have under your name.
Oh, correct.
Right?
Yep.
Good question.
Yeah, that's a really good question. So Fannie Mae will allow up to 10 finance properties per borrower. Okay. So you can work that system a little bit, right? Yeah. If you're married, you're both working, technically you can have 20 properties financed. Okay.
Right.
And here's another way to look at it. People get scared by that, but it's like, don't worry about it. Okay. By the time you get to 10, most likely one of them's almost paid off. You could sell these 2, pay these 2 off. Well, you just went from 10 to 6 now, right? Financed properties. Yeah. And so there's all these different strategies you can do. And there are boutique banks that we can broker things to that will do more than 10. But again, anytime you're outside the Fannie Mae parameters, everything's a little higher rate. Yep. Everything just gets a little more tricky because it's higher risk.
And so with the more mortgages that you have in your name, is it harder to get those loans, or?
No, in fact, that's a myth. Okay, really glad you brought that up. It's actually easier to qualify when you have more properties, because guess what? You can use that income from those properties to help you qualify. Okay, so now when I say easier, let me reframe that. It's not as hard. It's not as hard. I think it's easy because I've done it a bunch, but it's not as hard as you would think. Okay, so people think, well, hey, I want to buy this house. The mortgage is $2,000 a month. Well, good heavens, I'm never going to qualify. Well, guess what? If it rents for $2,000 a month, or we can count 1,500 of that right out of the gates. It's 75% because they're going to allow for a 25% vacancy. Okay.
Right.
So really, it's only costing you $500 a month against your debt ratio. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
If it was a $2,300 a month rent with a $2,000 mortgage, now it's only counting against you maybe $300, $350 a month. Okay. So it's not as hard as people think. It's really just a function of credit, the normal qualifying parameters, down payment. If you got all that, like, there's a very good chance if you qualify for a traditional mortgage, owner occupied, there's a very good chance you're going to qualify for investment.
Right.
Because you can use that offsetting rent.
So when I'm looking, let's say I'm building my portfolio up, doing traditional financing. Is there certain questions that we should ask, or is any loan broker the same? I mean, what kind of questions would we ask to see if they're the right fit?
Oh yeah, really good question. So at the end of the day, most lenders are going to be selling to Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. Okay,
Right.
They're the two big entities that buy pretty much everybody's loans, no matter where you went originally. So by and large, we're following those guidelines, and those are what we've been talking about. They have county loan limits, and they've got the 2-year work history and this and that. However, not all lenders are created equally, and not all mortgage loan officers are created equally. Okay.
Right.
So if I were an investor, I'd want to call me.
Yeah.
Because I'm out there doing it, right? Like
Yeah.
there's a difference between saying, hey, there's this product out there versus, hey, I just did this product and I've done it 10 times, right?
Yeah,
Let me tell you exactly how it works. So I would, and I'm not saying you have to use me, I would love that, but try to find a lender who's an investor, right? Who's
Yeah.
walking the walk, because they're going to know those programs inside and out. So that'd be the first advice. Second advice is you want to work with a company that obviously has experience. You can, this is similar to real estate. You can go take a 40-hour course and get your mortgage license and you're legit and ready to go. But there's a difference between someone who's had their license for 15 years and has done hundreds of
Right.
transactions and
Has seen everything.
The thing with lending, you guys, is just to tell you real quick, every quarter, you can't see this on the podcast, but every quarter we get the cliff notes from Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, and Ginnie Mae. They're an inch thick book, okay? And these are the updated guidelines.
Oh my gosh.
These are the cliff notes, okay? So it's ridiculous, and they're constantly changing them, okay?
Right.
So you can get into some hairy situations if you have a loan officer who doesn't know what they're doing, okay? You need someone who's been doing hundreds of loans. So it's like when I see something on an application, I'm like, oh yeah, we're going to need a letter of explanation for that. Or I'm going to need to double check this or document this just because I've seen it 100 times, right?
Yeah.
Whereas a new loan officer is going to be like, oh, you want to do a loan? Let's
Yeah,
do this. Let's
okay,
get
I
this
can
in
do it.
underwriting, right?
I got a
And
commission. All right.
3 weeks later, 3 weeks later, when the loan blows up and there's egg on everybody's face, the realtor hates you, hates everybody, hates
Yeah.
the lender, because the loan officer missed something. Like, you just don't want to get into that situation. So that's where experience, I would say, pick someone who has experience, who's walking the walk, who's done it. It's just going to make a huge difference in your lending experience.
And I wonder, well, you're in the circle, so if you had to guess a percentage of lenders out there to actually invest in themselves, what percentage would you guess?
Oh, wow. I don't know. That's a good question. It's less than you would think.
Right. I'm thinking like 5. I have no idea.
Yeah. I was going to say 10, but
Yeah.
I'm just thinking of people I know.
Right.
It's a lot less than you would think. And I think they're missing the ball because I think if you're in the industry, if you're a realtor or a loan officer, you're crazy not to be investing because you know the market. You're watching
100%.
it every day. It's like, get out there and do it.
I think fear is what really bogs down people.
Yep.
I mean, that's like the number one thing. I mean,
Yep.
so what would you, to give someone advice that's looking into whether it's flipping or buying and hold or just getting into it, whether they're realtors or investors or just need to supplement their retirement, what advice would you give someone that's just trying to start out?
Yeah, what I would say is, so I do a lot of self-help reading, okay?
Oh, yeah.
It's kind
I love it.
Self-help junkie.
Yeah, I know, right?
Yeah, I think if you're listening to this podcast, you're probably in that boat, right?
Yeah.
So one of my favorite books I read was The Success Principles by Jack Canfield. Fantastic book.
I'm reading that now.
Oh, you're really? No kidding. Okay.
Wow.
I don't know if you've got to this chapter, but one of my favorite chapters was Ready, Fire, Aim. Okay, so most people do ready, aim, fire. So
Yeah.
they get an idea. Oh, I want to start this business. Well, I'm going to need business cards. I'm going to need a website. They do all this stuff, and I call that analysis paralysis. Okay, so they're checking all the boxes, but guess what? They haven't actually done anything, right? So ready, fire, aim is I get an idea. Oh, I want to start this business. Awesome. I'm going to do it like right now. I'm going to go out there and I'm going to just do it.
Get it
or I'm
done.
going to buy this house, and you know what? You're probably going to screw up, and that is the absolute best thing that can happen to you. Because if you get in there and you lose a little money, or if it's not exactly what you thought, you're going to learn so much faster than any of the books you're reading, any of the podcasts. Of course, you should do everything. Listen to the podcast.
Yeah. Especially the podcast.
Yeah. But what I'm saying is, if you only listen and that's it, you've gained nothing, right?
Right.
So my advice is go out and do a deal. You're going to learn so much more from doing a deal versus anything else that you do. Okay. And the second advice I would give you is it's not as scary as you think. Okay.
Yeah.
It really isn't. It's actually fun. Okay.
Yeah, it is.
And so have those reserves. Okay. That's super important. If you're over leveraged, the scare level goes higher.
Right.
Significantly. So have those reserves and then just do it. Do your research, but don't over research. Okay. Don't over analyze it because you will literally talk yourself out of the deal. Okay.
Yeah.
So if it's a good enough deal and you're not freaked out, just do it.
Right.
Just get out there and do it. And you're going to learn so much. And the other advice I would say is then stop. Go buy one property, and that's it. So where I went wrong originally is I was like, hey, this is fun. I'll buy 10 more tomorrow. And then I got hurt, right?
Yeah.
So buy one, keep it for a year. You can't go wrong by just learning and watching and letting that thing do its thing, right? And then if you're not dead and you haven't foreclosed and the world hasn't come to an end, then go buy another one, right? And then slowly increase your portfolio.
Pace yourself.
Yep, exactly.
And how far would you pace yourself? Would it be like buy a rental once a year, or what's a good pace at least to start out with?
It's so hard to say because everybody's different. Income
Fair.
levels, experience, risk thresholds, right?
Yeah.
But I would say for a brand new investor, just average Joe that wants to get into it, I think one per year is pretty dang safe.
Yeah.
Because in 1 year you're going to learn a lot, and you're
Oh,
you're going to know if this is your thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because let's be honest, it's not for everybody. Okay. I think most people could be successful investors, but there are just certain personalities that it'll just drive them nuts. Okay?
Yeah.
If you have a zero risk tolerance, well, put it in a CD and just not make any money there.
You don't even beat inflation on that.
That's right, exactly. And there's a lot of people that are in
Oh,
that.
yeah.
And that's okay,
Yeah.
good for them. But that's not my thing.
Yeah.
I want to make money, not watch it go down.
Right. And even if you do lose money, I mean, my brother-in-law, he's a chiropractor, and he spent hundreds of thousands of dollars to get his education.
Right.
And well, debt mostly. I mean,
Yep.
he's since he's graduated a few years ago, he owes $100,000 more than when he started.
Because of interest.
Because of the interest,
Yeah.
exactly. So, but he paid for the education. He put in $100,000 to get the education. So if I get a deal and I'm gonna learn a ton and maybe I lose $20,000, it's just how to think about it.
Yes.
I just spent $20,000 to learn this.
Yes, that's a really good way to look at it.
A little a learning lesson I had in my first my fourplex I mentioned earlier. We needed about $10,000 in repairs. I forwarded the money to the management company that we had. That management company poofed. So they went out of business 100%. So there's no really recourse. Like literally LLC just went out of business.
Oh my gosh.
And so they just took $10,000. But it's because and you can they stole money. How dare they? Yeah, sure, you're mad. But you want to look at the back. Like, what can I do? Why did I do? I mean, what did I do? What could I have done to prevent this? Like, I could have vetted more. I could have got with someone and asked them hey, who to use? Get referrals instead of just just get the first person that picked the phone. You'll do it. Sweet, awesome. You're the cheapest. Let's do it.
Yeah.
So.
No, absolutely. We could have a whole podcast on failure. Right?
Oh yeah, easily, yeah.
Failure gets such a bad rap in our world.
Yeah.
It's something to avoid, but it's something to embrace, in my opinion.
It really is.
Every
I
time
agree.
you fail, you are so much better. You're not going to make that same mistake again, and you're going to be more careful next time. And you're sharper now. And it's just failure is what makes us successful. So don't be afraid. Get out there. Stick your toe in the water. You're not going to die. It's a very good chance you won't die. You might.
Might be piranhas in there, but
low probability. So just go do it, and then that fear goes away. And then evaluate in a year. Do I like this? Is this my thing? Have I lost 5 years because I haven't slept all year? It may not be your thing, right? But if you're like, that really wasn't that bad, and my gosh, this house went up 20 grand, and then go to another one.
Right.
So I just think people need to get out there and do it, and they're going to find all the benefits of real estate investing.
And I think it's when people think back, and all the listeners, if you think back to a time where you had to, where you're most proud of yourself, that's usually when you overcame something. When the first time you went on stage, you were terrified, but when you're done, oh, I did that. You reached that level. Like Jared Branch, they can do this. I know that for sure because I've done it. You know what I mean? So the more you raise that bar, the better it's going to be. But that bar is fear. You know?
Yeah.
But again, like you said, we talk a whole podcast about this alone.
Yeah.
Yes, we can. So, going back to people being afraid to try it out, or they don't know how to begin, or anything like that. There's also people who are willing to help out there. There's so much help. I mean, you can link up on social media platforms. I see it all the time where people ask, and there's so much of help available out there. And so if they are afraid, they could just reach out to somebody.
Not only are we in such a good market condition to buy, right, with rates low and a good environment for appreciation, we're in a great educational environment, right? Podcasts are free, good grief.
Yeah.
There's never been a better opportunity. You got YouTube. I mean, we didn't have any of this crap when I started out.
YouTube University.
I had Rich Dad Poor Dad, and I had Carlton Sheets. That was it, a book, right? And they tried to sell me their course, and I kept turning them away.
Right. Well, in the 90s, you had cassette tapes. That's what
Exactly, yeah. So I went out with 2 books, and I learned from doing, right? But now, my gosh, you've got, like you said, so many resources. Like, take advantage of that. But be careful that you don't get stuck into the analysis paralysis trap. I've listened to every podcast, read every book, don't have any properties.
Right.
Dumb. Go out and buy something.
Yeah, investing doesn't work.
Exactly.
That's what people end up saying.
Can I say one last thing? I know we're running low on time.
No,
but
you're good.
Another big piece of advice, if you're going to buy and hold, I highly, highly recommend property management, okay? And you got to get that fee out of your head, okay? 10%, 7%, whatever you can negotiate.
Money well spent.
By the way, it is negotiable.
Yeah.
If you know what you get if you don't ask, nothing, right? If you ask, you might get. So try to negotiate a deal, but all of my properties are managed, all of them. I even have a basement mother-in-law. I still have it managed. And it's the greatest tenant ever. I wouldn't need to pay that fee, but I don't want to deal with it, okay?
Right.
Because my job is doing loans, and real estate needs to be passive. Here's the other thing for a new investor. Even if you're negative cash flow just a little bit, that peace of mind is worth all the weight in the world, okay? Worth all the gold in the world, because let me just give you one quick example. Tenants are going to run you ragged if you don't have experience, and you kind of have to be a little bit of a jerk to be a good landlord. You really do, okay? Because they're going to tell you a sob story, you're going to feel bad, and you're going to buy into it, and now you've got a disaster on your hands, okay? So I have one property. This is so funny. Every month they pay for the management fee because they're late. But they make them pay the late fee, right? Yeah. Their late fee's 10%, and they pay it every month on the 15th. And I'm like, hey, I can manage my money, so I'm just going to let you keep doing that because you're paying my management fee.
Right.
And that's just one of many examples. Like, not only does it save you money, I think it makes you money, okay? Just for the emotional side of it. So highly recommend. I've got a really good manager if anyone needs a referral, but highly recommend property management.
Yeah, definitely. We can put their contact information in the show notes too. So
absolutely.
For me, like because I'm a soft-hearted guy, so I feel for people, and so that was one of my fears, just getting a rental, because if someone's like, oh, they lost their job, let's give them, so I literally told, when I actually got a real management company, that didn't steal $10,000.
That's a good feature.
That is a good feature. Yeah, that is a good thing. So I told them that, like, I don't want to hear, don't tell me the sob stories. Yeah. Like, you make that, if they're not paying the rent, that's what I need to know.
Yep,
and then I'll tell you.
That's a good thing to ask.
So because I know my weaknesses, because I like.
You might try to influence the manager.
Exactly.
Give them a break.
Exactly. We'll fine. Let's get, and I obviously I care about people, but everyone has a story and always has circumstances, so we have to be responsible for our own decisions, and so that's one thing that I did to mitigate my own not weakness, but in investing side point weakness.
I'll tell you what, I consider myself a good investor, but I'm a terrible property manager.
Right.
I was the worst.
Yeah.
Like, not only would I buy their substory, I'd like give them gifts and stuff. Oh, here's a little something. Like I was, visiting a ward member or something. Yeah. It's like, you got to separate that stuff.
Right.
If you're going to do it yourself, you got to put your mean hat on.
Yep.
And it is all business. If you can't do that, you have no business managing, really, is what it is. Because you're going to get eaten up.
All the more reason just to get someone to do that. And then you don't have to be a bad guy.
Exactly.
And you don't get phone calls in the middle of the night seeing the G.I. Joes in the toilet.
Yep, exactly.
I don't want those calls.
Yep.
Well, it's been great, Dan.
Yeah, thank you so much for letting me come on. I really appreciate it. It's been fun.
I just want to ask you one last question. So if you can go back in time in 23 years ago and talk to young Dan, What word of advice would you tell them?
Super easy answer. Don't sell anything.
That's how you
Literally.
Okay.
Yeah.
I wouldn't, because I sold probably 3, I'll have to add it up. I mean, by and large, I've bought and hold. But
Yeah.
I've sold at least 3, maybe 4 properties that I just pocketed the money.
Yeah.
And I'm in denial, honestly. I don't want to know how much I lost.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
that one example was $200,000. It's probably over $500,000 that I literally flushed down the toilet by selling and taking a buck today versus later.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
I would
That's good advice. That's good advice.
No, sell. If you're going to sell, roll it into a 1031 and buy another one.
Yeah.
I'm not against selling.
Makes it better.
Not against selling, but it needs to be an improvement. Right.
Right.
So.
Yeah, and don't pay those taxes. The 1031 is
Correct.
important.
Correct. So.
Well,
Awesome.
and everybody has their own little niche that they fall into.
Yeah.
Once you start in the game, like you
Yeah.
shared, you
Well-
started flipping, you found
Yep.
out it wasn't for you started wholesaling.
That's the
Yeah.
thing, a lot of it's personality. You got to find what works for you. I've
Yes.
got one of my number 1 realtors and one of my best friends. That's all he does is flips, and he kills it. He's
Yeah.
very good at it. But that is his job.
Right.
That's his day job, and he makes really good money, and he's got a ton of experience with it. But I can't compete with that.
Right.
I don't have the time.
Yeah.
So find what works for you, and then just do it.
Yeah.
And there's many ways to skin a cat too. Like you'll have a guy come on next week that he hates buy and hold and he's flipping. And let's find out what he does,
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Find your niche. There's so many ways to make money in real estate. You just got to find your personality, find what works for you, find what works with your family and career, and then you just go with it.
Right, and it's just trial and error. If you're not sure what your niche is, it's trial and error. That's what I had to do.
Right.
I mean, I looked into mobile home, like buying mobile home parks for a good portion of a year, and it just nothing seemed to work. It didn't seem to jive with me. But then when I like Jana was saying, like when I actually find something that I was like, okay, this I can talk to people, I can find off market deals. I'm good at that. Let me just focus on that.
Sorry, one last thing. I just
Please,
keep
this is
thinking
good.
of
This is all
things.
good stuff. We love it.
Once you find your niche, I would recommend that you stay there. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. They
Yeah.
say, you know who the worst investors are?
Who's that?
Doctors.
Doctors.
It's true. So they're the worst investors because they have a bunch of money and they're smart
Yeah.
in their field and they don't know anything about other fields, right? But they think they do.
I tell you
Sorry,
what.
doctors, we love you to death, but you're horrible
need you.
investors. Okay?
Yeah, we need you.
Yeah. No. I actually love doctors.
Oh,
They're the
sure,
best
sure,
to do
but
loans
investor
for.
wise,
Yeah.
yeah.
They're like, hey, I'm busy. Here's all my stuff. Just tell me when it's done.
Yeah.
Love doctor loans. But they really need to do their research before
Yes.
they dive in. Okay, and then once they find that niche. But my point is they're so good at being a doctor,
Yeah.
right? That's what they do. Okay, so when you find that niche, just do it.
Yeah.
You don't have to reinvent the wheel and start 5 different ideas, right? Just find
Well-
the one that works for you and go with it.
On that note, I mean, so a big lead generation funnel, one of many that I have, is bird dogging or driving for dollars, however you call it. And the vacant homes, the vast majority of the vacant homes I find are owned by doctors.
Interesting.
I'm not even exaggerating. So when I can't find the information, I'll just Google it because I can find who
Interesting.
I can find out the name.
Yeah.
I can Google their name and it'll come up at doctor's office,
Yeah.
dentist's office.
Well, they're literally so
Psychologists.
busy that
Yeah.
it's like, the mortgage is only $1,500 a month, whatever. Like, I'll
Exactly.
figure that out later, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And there was like,
So-
and even me like calling them like, hey, I mean, I want to buy your property.
Yeah.
Relieve this headache. It's okay. Like they're making enough money. Like I get it all. It's not a big a deal. But yeah,
It's a good problem to have. But
yeah, right. Exactly.
No, but the point is, find what you're good at and then do it. And then you don't have to
That's
reinvent the wheel.
Yeah.
And it's tempting too. I'm like,
That's good
gosh,
advice.
dang it, should I be doing commercial?
Yeah.
And I was like, I could, but what are the risks? You know, I don't know what I'm doing.
Right.
And this is working. If it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? And so I don't have all the answers. I'm the first one to tell you that. But I can tell you that through 23 years, trial and error, losing a bunch of money, making a bunch of money, I found my niche. It works for me. And I think it's a good one for the average person to mimic, right? I think
Yeah.
if
Yeah.
people did my strategy, the average person, I think they're going to be pretty high level of success rate. So
Yeah. There's not a lot. You don't have to have a ton of
Pretty
expertise.
dang
to get
simple,
into it.
yeah.
Especially
Pretty dang simple.
surround yourself with the right professionals, like
Right.
the property management, a good loan officer, all
Yep,
that stuff. Yeah.
Yep, you got to build your team. Like that's
Yeah.
super important. But yeah.
So where can our listeners get a hold of you? A website, phone number, email?
So danhubrich.com is my website, so you can always find me there. 801-808-4648 is my personal cell phone, so feel free to text or call anytime. And, love to do a loan for you, but
Yeah.
that's not why we're here.
Yeah.
I'm passionate about real estate, as you've probably noticed.
Yeah.
And I just love talking to people about it, and it's good karma. If I give you good advice, whether you use me for anything,
Yeah.
it'll come back to me. Maybe you'll tell a friend or whatever. So I just love talking about it. So call anytime. I'm happy to strategize and answer questions.
That's awesome.
So.
And do you only invest, or do you only lend in Utah, or is it nationwide?
No, so I'm licensed in California, Nevada, Idaho, a lot of the surrounding states and stuff.
Okay,
So
nice.
our company's licensed in most states. So even if it's a handoff, I can partner up with another loan officer around the country.
Great.
And we can get you set up. So
Right, because it is kind of hard to find a loan officer, like you said, that is investing as well.
correct. Yeah.
Right, so-
Yep. So
Cool.
All right. Well, thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's been amazing. It was
Thank
really
you so
good.
much. That was
Yeah, I
fun.
really enjoyed it.
Yep.
Okay.
We hope you liked that podcast. Stay tuned for next Monday for a brand new podcast and a brand new guest. Make sure to like, subscribe, and share.